All right, he is back, making his triumphant return to the Candlestick Chronicles podcast. It is Matt Maiocco of NBC Sports Bay Area, of the Matt Maiocco YouTube channel now.
Yeah, yeah.
And just how's that going?
I don't know how it's going, to be honest with you. Yeah, I just decided to kind of, see what that space is all about. I'm happy that you've already considered this a triumphant return. Usually,
Mhm.
the final result determines whether it's triumphant or not. But to pile up the victory before it even starts, it makes me feel pretty good. So, thank you, Chris.
Well, I feel victorious just having you on the podcast, Maddie. So
Yeah, I'm
it's
really
good to
tough.
see you as
I
always.
had tough booking. You texted me like 5 minutes ago and said, "Hey, can you come on?" And I'm like, "Well, come on, you gonna give me more notice than that?" And next thing you know, here I am. I'm
Yeah.
basically just groveling around looking for affection any way I can get it.
Yeah, that's true. If I know you, that's one thing you tend to do a lot of the time. All right. So we are going to talk about the 49ers a little bit. And something that we've talked about here, I think has been sort of a large talking point surrounding the 49ers heading into this season, was about the vibes, and the vibes maybe not being particularly good with Brandon Ayuk dealing with his contract status and Christian McCaffrey missing time in training camp because of the injury that kept him out of week 1. You have Trent Williams back after a prolonged holdout. So, it seems like, and Kyle Shanahan's talked about the Brandon Ayuk thing, and John Lynch has talked about the Brandon Ayuk thing. And from the coaching and front office perspective, maybe it did seem a little bit more stressful of an August than the 49ers would have anticipated. But the locker room's been open now for a couple weeks. Um, you've been around the team. What's your perception of the vibes and how what we perceive as sort of a tumultuous August has impacted the players on the team?
Yeah, I mean, it was tumultuous. There's no way to get around that. And the 49ers front office and coaches, weren't real pleased with the way the Brandon Ayuk thing was going down. And, they believed that Brandon Ayuk should have made a commitment long before he did, that he had all the information he needed, that he was just dragging his feet, that he couldn't make a decision and all that. But as soon as it's done, it's done. And I think probably the part, because I want to say I was an alarmist, but I did feel like it was just kind of a disjointed off season, disjointed training camp to be specific. And so I wouldn't have been surprised if the Jets came out and did a number on the 49ers. The fact that it was the other way around, that it looked like it was the Jets who had all of the strange things happening in the offseason, I would say it surprised me a little bit. But I think that the part that probably, when I was looking at it, that I just probably underestimated was just how good the 49ers are. And not only how good they are from, player 1 to whatever that number is, player 1 to 30 on their roster, but it's also the leadership. It's the guys like Fred Warner. It's, Kittle, two really good players at their positions, two leaders on the team, but who go about it in completely different ways. And so, I mean, those are just two players, but they have really strong leadership. And let's even throw Brock Purdy into that, another leader who is just as impactful as those two guys are in the locker room, but again, in a completely different way. So I think some of this is organic and some of it is very conscious in the part of John Lynch in constructing a roster. They have different personalities, but they all know to be pulling in the same direction and they all bring a little bit something different. And so, should I have been surprised? I've been around these guys for years, so I probably shouldn't have been. But this was the first time where things just seemed weird. And then, you add in the Ricky Pearsall situation, and you just didn't know if the frame of mind was going to be conducive to going out and playing good football week 1. And they were. And Trent Williams said it. He had the holdout. He gets on a private plane in the wee hours and arrives in the South Bay. And he said once he walked through the doors and, was re-greeted by his teammates and some of his new teammates, meeting them, the thing that stood out to him was just how serious everybody was. And okay, let's get to work. And I guess my point is these guys have been through it enough that every individual, at least the veteran guys, know exactly what they have to do to get ready for the regular season. And then the rookies, the young guys, are very much into it, and they all seem to be very mature, and they're smart enough to realize, okay, I'm just going to watch Fred Warner, and whatever he does, I'm going to do that. And, a guy like, even though he hasn't been on the field, a guy like Christian McCaffrey, a guy like Brock Purdy, Kittle. I mean, we could just go on and on and on with the players. Kyle Juszczyk. Kyle Juszczyk had his own, disjointed off season, accepting the pay cut, and then he's named a team captain. So it kind of tells you that these guys are pros who have been around. They know what it looks like. They know what it's supposed to feel like. And I think despite all the obstacles, they did a really good job of getting ready for the season opener.
Yeah, and you and I were both there. For me, it was very early on in my career covering the team. But you and I were both there in 2013 and 2014, and we saw sort of that version of the Niners championship window close. And I think going into 2014, and that there was obviously all the reporting and all of the dysfunction behind the scenes with Jim Harbaugh and Trent Baalke and Jed York, but I think there was a feeling that given the way the offseason went for the Niners, that could repeat itself with this group, given the expectations. But, how would you compare and contrast? I know you just alluded to a bunch of it, but how would you compare and contrast what's working for this team right now at this point in their window versus, maybe what didn't go well at the end of that window in 13 and 14 under Jim Harbaugh?
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer, but I think you'll understand exactly what I'm saying. That team that you alluded to did have a lot of really good players and also some good character guys. But there were also the good players who were kind of out for themselves a little bit. And so I think once they started to go downhill, and you could feel it. I mean, if you're there in that time, it's hard to explain, but you would walk into the locker room and look around and just see nothing but miserable people who hated to show up at work every day. And that, the 2014 team, and then that spilled, of course, into 2015 and 2016. I mean, it wasn't necessarily a high character team. And I don't say that lightly, but also you can tell by, how often we had to go down to Superior Court, or phone, or consult the police information officer. It wasn't a high character team at all. And when things went bad, they went spiraling out of control. And it just, even the guys who were really good guys who would fit in today on this team, it was almost like they were kind of outnumbered in a sense. So it had a different feel. And I never get the sense, or rarely have I over the past 5 years, that guys are being forced to come to work every day. And I really got the sense that, those teams, they just weren't having fun. And, 85%, if not more, is about putting together a group of guys that enjoy it, that enjoy each other, that enjoy being coached hard, but getting better, and who look forward to going to work every day. So those guys, and again, I'm not lumping everybody into that, but
Right.
a larger percentage of those guys were just, right? I mean, what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I think I know what you're getting
Am I
at.
right or am I right?
No, you're right. You're definitely right. It felt like I remember a lot of those locker rooms just going in there and them being ghost towns. Like no one, like later on when Kyle Shanahan came in, there was the ping pong tables and people hanging out and laughing and having fun in between meetings and practice and all of that stuff. That 2014 season, you'd go in the locker room during availability and it would just be kind of a ghost town.
Yeah.
And
And I'd say,
so
the early days of Shanahan and Lynch, it took them a little bit, they inherited
yeah,
a lot of those guys, and then they, made some draft picks that didn't really fit with what you'd consider the 49ers culture of now. And so I think it took them a while to kind of figure that out and get the locker room right and get the roster right. And now, man, it's really, I mean, they've still made mistakes when it comes to drafting, no doubt about it. I mean, all you have to do is look at, the first and second round picks, or what are the first round picks. And it seems like they've had more misses than hits with their first rounders, but they've also really gotten some absolute stars in the first round. But every time they miss, they somehow find a way to get somebody else that might be better than what they were even hoping the guy that they were going to, hit on. Like, I mean,
I think
look at like Trey Lance.
right.
Trey
Yeah.
Lance, if the 49ers don't hit on Trey Lance, the organization is set back 10 years. Oh, unless, of course, the 262nd pick ends up finishing fourth in MVP voting. Stuff like that. Reuben Foster. Oh my gosh, he's what a steal getting him late in the first round of that draft. Oh my gosh. But then they get Dre Greenlaw. So they've always managed to kind of cover up their mistakes with just these unexpected gems that they end up getting somewhere, somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking of first round picks, and there's no easy way to transition into what happened with Ricky Pearsall. So I mean, I know you did you spent a lot of time working that story. But I'm curious as to like because Ricky hasn't spoken publicly yet, and he probably won't speak publicly, I would guess, until he's put back on the active roster at least. But in terms of his spirits and sort of his presence in the building, you being around, what's that been like? What's Ricky Pearsall? What's his attitude right now? How's he feeling?
I mean, he seems great. He's down in the one corner of the locker room, actually the furthest corner from where you walk into the locker room. So
Yeah.
basically, for him to leave the locker room, he passes like everybody, and
Hmm.
so I saw him today, and he gave me he's not. According to the 49ers PR, he's not ready to talk yet. They're gonna play this thing slow, but it's not like he's just kind of over in the corner, not doing anything, not being social. I saw him. I mean, I saw him with his shirt off today, for the first time, and it's just kind of like it's absolutely shocking. It's like crazy to think what happened on August 31st in broad daylight. It is absolutely wild. And he walked past and, gave him the head nod. He said, "What's up?" And then on his way out, and the corner I'm talking about, he ended up sitting next
Hmm.
to Deebo Samuel. He was sitting in George Odom's locker, which is right next to Deebo Samuel, and those guys just chatted for 15 or 20 minutes, and then he exited. But it is absolutely wild what he went through, what the team went through, and this is a guy that really turned a lot of heads. Just the way he came into the building, the work that he put in, yeah, I mean, you can tell he just loves the sport. Watching him practice, he had the hamstring injury at the beginning of training camp, and then later the shoulder injury where kind of popped out and popped back in. And he missed a couple of weeks, but when he's been out there, I mean, he's looked like absolutely like he belongs. So um, I think the team. I know there were questions. I even had these questions. When you know that he got shot. For still had that team party at Kyle Shanahan's house. The party goes off as planned, And then they have this moment, this kind of, I don't know if it's a galvanizing moment or what, where players are coming in and their fiancés or significant others or whatever are coming in, and Kyle's reassuring everybody, Ricky's okay, and we wouldn't be having this party if he weren't. He's okay. And then they hooked up. I guess they brought out a TV and they did like a FaceTime with him. And some players, Ronnie Bell told me like, well, you could see his face light up when he saw everybody else. And then also it sounded like all the players were like, oh my gosh, it is true. He is okay. He's right there. He's talking and joking and everything else. So, kind of going back to the first thing we talked about, the locker room and just kind of the nature of this team, maybe it's cliche, but maybe something like that does bring the team closer together. Trent Williams alluded to, he heard about that from afar. He thought back to the very limited interaction he had with Ricky Pearsall in the offseason program when he just stopped by for a day, when Trent Williams just stopped by for a day. And in Trent's mind, he was like, you know what? I need to get this thing over with and get to camp. I need to join that group of guys again. And, a couple days later, he was back in camp. So, I don't know if it's cliche or if it's, I kind of tread lightly because we're talking about real serious stuff and trying to draw parallels to what it means to a locker room and how does it affect the football team. But I kind of believe that it did bring probably an already close knit group of guys, maybe even closer together.
Yeah. So is there any indication? I mean, I would imagine, even if he is activated, put on the 53-man roster in time for that week 5 game against Arizona, it would be a stretch to assume that he would play. But do you have any feel for what he's doing in terms of working out? And, is anybody talking about return dates or anything like that with Pearsall yet?
No, I know initially it was like a week to 10 days that they didn't want him doing anything. They didn't want him breaking a sweat because, he had open wounds. He had
Sure.
literally a bullet went through his chest,
It's
which is
crazy.
crazy. And so, you know how like a lot of times when a guy will have let's just say a finger, an operation on their finger, and it's like, oh, he should be able to play through that. Just put a cast on
Right.
it, but they don't want the guy to play because of the sweat and the risk of infection. So I think he's beyond that now. So, but what exactly he's doing, I couldn't tell you. Now that you've kind of put this in my mind, I will ask Kyle Shanahan next time I see him that exact question. But I don't, the 49ers, I don't know what they're going to do as far as that because right now they have their fourth receiver is Chris Conley, and he plays a lot of special teams. So it's almost like, Pearsall's a good player, and I'm sure he can help them, but you wouldn't want him playing special teams, I don't think, ever.
Right. Right.
And so I don't know exactly how they're going to kind of manage that and kind of massage that situation. But at the same time, they were quite adamant that, oh, no, Ricky is part of the plan this season. He will get on the field. He will contribute. So we'll see how it goes. But I say right now, maybe all that's a little bit premature as far as, kind of figuring out when exactly he can get out or what kind of role that he would have.
Yeah, so another guy who obviously is important to the 49ers, whose status is a little bit uncertain, is Christian McCaffrey. Our good buddy Eric Branch spoke to a surgeon and wrote in the Chronicle, I think it was for today, Thursday, that Achilles tendonitis is pretty problematic because you might be more prone to tearing the Achilles altogether. So in your estimation, how are the 49ers handling this? And is it, because to me it feels like, all right, next 2 games are on artificial surface. Christian's going to want to practice because he's Christian McCaffrey and that's what he does. But do you get the sense that, maybe the power brokers are saying, well, now that we have Jordan Mason and he played as well as he did Monday night, maybe we don't have to rush him back, and maybe it is a week or 2 or 3 just to make sure that anything serious they avoid anything serious with McCaffrey's
Yeah, I
injury.
mean, I think we're talking about something very delicate, right? I mean, that Achilles,
Yeah.
and we don't know the seriousness of it. The fact that he's practicing, although in a limited fashion, says something. At the same time, he did miss considerable practice time during training camp. So, I think what McCaffrey said is, when he's ready, he'll be ready. He likes to approach every week like he's going to play, and then finds out, 90 minutes before kickoff or day of game or night before the game or whatever the case may be, like, oh, you're not playing. Um, so I don't know how it's tough to speculate on what the plan should be
Yeah.
without all the information. But as good as well as Jordan Mason played, I don't think that can be the determining factor either. Like you have to make the decision on Christian McCaffrey in a bubble. You have to be able to just say, is he ready? And if he's not, regardless of who you're trotting out there as the running back to replace him, it doesn't matter. I mean, with him, with the new contract that he has, that has more guaranteed money, with his importance to the team, uh, you just got to do what you think is right as far as making sure that he's available when the team might need him most. Now, the artificial thing, the artificial turf thing, is something that he was asked about, and he basically said, if you're ready, you're ready. You can't be, oh, I'm ready to play on grass, but not ready to play on artificial turf. Now, the turf at US Bank Stadium is new this season. They tout it as, it's some fancy name, but they tout it as the most like natural grass artificial turf there is. Of course, I'm sure that's propaganda. I'm sure the maker isn't saying, "Oh, our artificial turf is so artificial that it's gonna tear up all your joints and ligaments and tendons." I don't think anybody's ever
Right.
gonna say that, but it's. I mean, I wouldn't expect that he would play. I watched him a lot in warm-ups and early in the practice on Thursday, and it doesn't seem like he's pushing it. And I would think that he knows his body very well. So I don't know. I mean, Kyle Shanahan said there was no thought given, at least up to this point, of putting him on injured reserve. So I mean, it leads you to believe that they expect him to play sometime in the first 4 games of the season.
Yeah. Or he just doesn't want to tell the Vikings that CMC is going to be out. I don't know. It's one of
Well, I
those.
mean, at this point, I don't know if it really matters. Like, I think the
Yeah.
Vikings probably are. I I mean, I'm sure there's some preparation for McCaffrey. I mean,
Yeah.
they played him last year, so they know, they know how to prepare for him. So I mean, they're ready for both, but I don't think it's going to be a big shock if he's on the inactive list 90 minutes before kickoff.
Yeah, that's fair. All right, Maddie, we said 15 minutes. We're approaching 24, so I'm going to end it here. Just want to say thanks for coming on, and enjoy Minnesota. How
Yeah.
happy were you that when the schedule came out, it was early September that you'd be going to Minnesota and not December?
Well, this might surprise you. When I go to cold weather cities, and I hate the cold, absolutely despise the cold. Um,
For
that
the listeners, Matt is the type who bundles up in air conditioning. Like,
this
I'll
is
look over at Matt's cubicle and he'll have like a thick layer on just for the air conditioning. So
Yeah.
so
In fact, one of my pet peeves is when it's hot outside and you walk into an indoor place, whether it's a restaurant or whatever, and it's so cold you have to put on like another layer. Like, come on, people. Just because it's 95 degrees outside doesn't mean it has to be 58 degrees inside. Just bump it down to 75 or 80 and we're all happy. But here's something that might surprise you. When I go to places on the road like Buffalo or Green Bay, I say, bring it on. because I know I only have to be there a couple days and I can go home. I don't live there. And then I have a good story to tell. Oh, this one time I was in Green Bay. It was so cold, so I
Yeah.
actually don't mind going to those cold weather places when it is cold, because it's nothing that we living in the Bay Area ever experience. And I can suck it up for a day or two.
Yeah, you're a tough guy ultimately when
Now,
it comes down
let's not go that far. I
No,
just like
Minnesota.
I just like to be able to tell a good story.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
and you do. You do. You have for a long time. I think Minneapolis is one of the most underrated cities in the
I
country.
like it
I think
too.
I'll say
Yeah,
that.
I like.
Particularly when it's warm.
Yes. No, you're right. I think the Twins are in town
Oh, there
Saturday.
you go.
I might go to that. I have a question for you. This is what's the name of
Yes.
what's the name of your podcast here?
The Candlestick Chronicles.
Yeah, but so you named the podcast after the beer from Cooperage. Is that how
That's
that works?
yeah.
Okay.
No, not quite. Not quite.
Okay.
They decided to name it well, I think it was a joint decision. But yeah, it dropped this week. I'm sure you're well aware. You've had it plenty of times in the
Oh yeah,
past.
yeah. I don't know.
What's your
Plenty of
review as a
times.
beer guy?
Well, no, I like it. It's a hazy,
Yes.
right? It's
Yes.
probably what do I? Oh, it's probably like 6.5% alcohol.
6.8, I think. I might have to
6.8.
double
Okay.
check on that.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I know that you invited the whole crew up there in
Mhm.
2021, correct?
The first year of the event. Yeah, that was a
Yeah.
barn burner.
And so that was a barn burner. And so 22, 23. So I missed 2 years. I don't know if I can
Yeah.
get up. When do you have a big release celebration at the Cooperage in Santa Rosa?
Well, it's gonna be we're gonna do a live show October 12th, Saturday at 8 p.m. And yeah, so you're obviously the invitation has already been extended.
Okay.
So no pressure. We know you might have other obligations,
Yeah,
but we'd
I
love to
think
see you.
that'll be the Saturday after the 49ers at Seattle Thursday night game.
Yes. So anybody, so our guests and Niners fans can maybe get up to Santa Rosa and not have to worry about getting back to the South Bay, um,
Right, to
for Sunday
watch it.
morning, and yeah, they can have a couple beverages and not feel terrible about having to go to work or watch a football game the next day.
Okay. Well, I want to be completely honest with you. I would say the odds are a little bit slim that I'm up there
Okay.
in Santa Rosa
Okay.
on that Saturday, but if I can pull it off, because I think I might have some other things going on, but if I can pull it
Mhm.
off, I definitely will.
No, listen, as you know, as a former Ohio State Buckeye or an Ohio State alum, I know what the pull of Ohio State football can feel like, and I know it's going to be pulling you up to Eugene. So I just want you to know, from my end, it's totally understandable.
Actually, it would probably be just the opposite, because I think my wife can look at like hotel rooms within a 50-mile radius, and
Hmm.
it doesn't seem real inviting for somebody who doesn't have tickets to the
Hmm.
game or a hotel room at this point to go up there. But that is with a daughter who is a second-year Duck. Um,
Hmm.
there is a chance that that's where I'll be. Um, on that particular day. And that game, there's a chance, right, that game would be going on during your event?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think they've scheduled the kickoff, and I mean, I would imagine if both those teams are top five teams at that point, that it would be prime time. So,
Yeah, not that I don't
um,
think, I don't know. I've seen Oregon play a couple times this year. I'm not sure that they're top 5 worthy. I'm
we'll
not sure
see.
they're top
We'll
10
see.
worthy or top 15 worthy. Just a little, just
Listen,
unless they start coming together.
it would be better if it was an afternoon kick, no doubt about that. But anyway, Maddie, thank you
All
so
right.
much hanging out with us in the bowels of Levi's Stadium. Check him out on the 49ers Talk podcast on NBC Sports Bay Area, and of course on the Matt Maiocco YouTube channel.
Yeah, I just started the YouTube, so yeah, check me out. Let's see if we can get some followers. Do you have a YouTube channel, Chris? This one?
We do, yes. The Candlestick Chronicles podcast
This
is
this
on
one right
YouTube,
here.
believe it or
So
not.
this is your
This one
YouTube.
right here.
So we're competing
That
head to head for YouTube subscribers.
We've always kind of been competitors, Maddie. I don't
Yeah,
know if you've
that's why
known
there's
that,
such
but
bitterness that we
yeah, such bitterness. That's why I'm just always trying to cut you at the knees whenever I can.
yes. What I hear is YouTube people who watch YouTube. In other words,
Mhm.
there's more than enough YouTube subscribers and viewers to go around, and uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, that's that's what I hear, and that's what I'm going with.
All right. Appreciate you, Maddie. We will talk soon, and hopefully I'll catch you either at the Cooperage event or at a 49ers game very soon.
Sounds good, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
See you, buddy.